Right, so let's draw a schematic for a knitting pattern in Inkscape. The first thing I'm going to do is open Inkscape. Now, I'm not going to walk you through the downloading process, so if you don't have Inkscape already on your computer, you'll want to go to their website and download the version of their Inkscape that is best for your computer. And once you download that and open it, you might appear something like this on your screen. I have here a new document that is all ready for me to draw some schematics on. Now, it's not completely ready. There are a few things I like to change to this document before I just start drawing out the schematic for whether it's a hat or sock or whatever I'm going to be drawing. So the first thing I do is I come up to File on this top screen here, and I'm going to click that, and I'm going to scroll down to Document Properties and click that. Now, we're not going to change everything that's already set up here in Inkscape, but the one thing I will change is under Display. I like to change the format to US letter, and I also like to change the grid. So we're gonna go, actually there's no grid if you can see right now on my document, but grids is one of the things I like about Inkscape, because this grid option, kind of like, you know, as knitters we use grids a lot. It allows us to not only keep our lines straight and just keep things looking very clean and neat, but really allows us to make proportional schematics, or if we're creating charts for our a fair motif or whatever you're doing. We all like our grids, don't we? Or I like my grids. So we're going to put a grid on this document. So you can see here it's set on rectangular grid, but they do have another option in Inkscape. I've never used this option. I always use rectangular grid, so we're going to leave it on that. And we're going to click New. And voila! Our document now has a grid on it, which is very exciting. The only other things I'm going to change, and these are kind of important things to kind of know about. These tools can be so helpful as you're setting up your grid, and you might choose to set your grid up differently, but hopefully I can show you some of the ways you can change this to best suit your needs. So you can see right now the grid units are in pixels. I'm going to change that to inches. Now you may prefer centimeters. Just if you're going to be drawing a schematic that you want to be proportional or to scale, you want to pick a measurement that you're going to be familiar with working with. So remember, the grid is to serve you. Now we're going to go down to spacing. Now let me show you what spacing really does. If I set spacing X and spacing Y both to 1, you can see now that every grid on my every grid square, I couldn't figure out the right words. This is the grid square, and every grid square is now 1 inch. So that spacing X and spacing Y is very helpful in adjusting to and knowing what you've adjusted to so you can create schematics to scale. So today I'm just going to set that to 0.25. So now I have, and now the other thing I'm going to change, and I like, again, this is a thing to change that's going to best suit you. This is not the way you have to change. You can leave it at every major grid line every 5 as it's listed here, but I prefer to change that to 4. So now my document, when I look at these grids, I know that these major grid lines, every major grid line is basically equal to 1 inch. And so this is so helpful when I'm trying to draw knitting pattern schematics to scale. So we've now set up the grid on our document, and we're almost ready to start drawing. Right, the next thing we need to do before we just start drawing, and I highly encourage you to do this now, is go ahead and save your document. So come up to File, and we're going to click File, and we're going to come down to Save As, and we're going to click that. Now we just need to name our file. You obviously just want to name it whatever you need to find it later on. For you, it might be the name of the pattern that you're creating a schematic for, whatever you need to name it. So I'm going to name mine today just example schematic, because I'm not specifically creating this for a specific pattern. I'm just using this as an example on how I create schematics and the tools I use. Now, here's the important part. Whatever you choose to name your file, you want to make sure that it's saving as an SVG file. And an SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. And this is really important for saving your schematics, because a SVG file, no matter how many times this file is expanded out or shrunken down, the graphics will maintain their proportions, and that is so important when you're creating schematics, which are supposed to represent the proportions of the knitting pattern that it was drawn for. So make sure it's saving as an SVG file, and then you can click Save. Now whatever you draw in this document will not be lost, and we can get going and start drawing.